Nestled in the shadow of the Rockies, Whispering Pines was the kind of town where the air carried the scent of pine needles and fresh rain, and neighbors waved as they passed. It was the quiet life Sheriff Alexandra Winters had sought after years as an elite intelligence commander with INSCOM, leaving behind the covert world of high-stakes operations and endless danger. Or so she thought. But tranquility was an illusion. Beneath the town's picturesque surface, shadows began to stir. A gang of bikers, the Ghost Legion, rolled into town, their presence marked by violence, intimidation, and a series of accidents that left residents afraid to speak out. At first glance, they seemed like another outlaw group testing the boundaries of a small-town sheriff. Yet Alex's sharp instincts whispered that something far more sinister lurked beneath their leather jackets and roaring engines. When the gang's leader confronts her in her office, expecting to cow her with thinly veiled threats, Alex's past resurfaces with a vengeance. The Ghost Legion has no idea who they've provoked. A woman whose training involved dismantling entire criminal networks from the shadows, a hunter of predators who thrived where others faltered. What begins as a battle against local gang intimidation spirals into a labyrinth of corruption, danger, and global consequences. Alex discovers that the Ghost Legion is only a small piece of a sprawling cartel network using Whispering Pines as a test site for a chilling new operation. As she delves deeper, she finds herself up against the architect, a shadowy figure orchestrating the cartel's moves with ruthless precision. The stakes couldn't be higher. A town held hostage, lives on the line, and a web of corruption that stretches far beyond Whispering Pines. Facing relentless assaults, betrayal from unexpected quarters, and enemies who know how to fight from the shadows, Alex must use every ounce of her training to protect her town and unravel the cartel's network before it spreads across the nation. But even as Alex gains ground, her adversaries prove cunning. They strike where it hurts most, leveraging their resources to erode trust, sow chaos, and silence anyone who dares to stand against them. As the storm builds, Alex must decide how far she's willing to go to uphold justice and what she's prepared to lose in the process. In Whispering Pines, the line between predator and prey blurs, and no one is safe from the storm. What happens next will change everything, and the war is just beginning. The late afternoon sun cast its warm light across the small town of Whispering Pines, nestled in the shadow of Montana's rugged mountain ranges. Sheriff Alexandra Winters, seated in her patrol car, cruised slowly down Main Street. A former INSCOM commander, Alex had traded her high-stakes military career for a quieter life, or so she thought. The tranquil facade of the town betrayed none of the tension that had been simmering for months. Frightened business owners, unexplained accidents, and a growing sense of unease that no one dared to voice. As Alex turned past Eleanor's diner, the faint rumble of motorcycles reached her ears. Her eyes narrowed as she spotted three unfamiliar bikes parked at the far end of the street, their chrome glinting in the fading light. The skeletal rider emblem on their tanks, with its eerie red eyes, was unmistakable. Ghost Legion, a notorious biker gang rumored to have ties to a dangerous cartel. Alex parked outside the sheriff's office, stepping out just as Deputy Riley Bennett approached. He was young but capable, though today his usual relaxed demeanor was replaced by visible unease. "Another report from Henderson Ranch," Riley said, holding a file. "Same pattern. Property damage, no witnesses, no complaints." Alex took the file, scanning it quickly. 7 incidents in 3 months, all targeting businesses that had previously thrived. The pattern was too organized for coincidence. "Chief Hawthorne called again," Riley added. "Wants to know why we're wasting time on these accidents." Alex's jaw tightened. Chief Richard Hawthorne, head of law enforcement in the neighboring Copper Canyon County, had been pressuring her to hand over jurisdiction on these incidents. His insistence was suspiciously persistent. "Tell him we'll handle our own jurisdiction," Alex said firmly. As she entered the office, the door chimed behind her, heavy boots clattering on the floor. The tension in the air was palpable before Alex even looked up. Well, a gravelly voice drawled. "Small-town female sheriff. Ain't that progressive?" Alex raised her gaze slowly, taking in the 3 Ghost Legion members who had entered. Marcus Blade Kane, their leader, stood at the center, his scarred face twisted in a smug grin. Flanking him were his enforcers, Thomas, Tank, Gregory, and Eric, Snake, Patterson. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" Alex asked calmly. Blade swaggered forward, planting his hands on her desk. "Just passing through, Sheriff. Making sure everyone understands how things work around here." Alex studied him with the sharp, analytical precision that had once made her a top intelligence operative. "Things work according to the law," she replied. Blade's smile faltered for a split second before he shrugged. "Laws change, Sheriff. Smart folks adapt. Others," he let the threat hang in the air. Alex stood slowly, deliberately. "That sounds like a threat, Mr. Kane." "Friendly advice," Blade said, his grin returning. Behind him, Tank and Snake shifted uneasily. They hadn't expected her to stand her ground so firmly. "Funny thing," Alex said, her voice calm but edged with steel. "You're not the first to try advising me. Didn't work out too well for them either." For a moment, Blade's confidence cracked. He straightened, stepping back toward the door. "We'll be seeing you around, Sheriff. Hope you're smart enough to take good advice when it's offered." As the bikers mounted their motorcycles and roared away, Riley let out a breath he'd been holding. "That's going to be trouble." "It already is," Alex replied, watching them disappear down the street. Later that evening, Alex sat at her desk, reviewing satellite images and property records. Patterns were emerging. Unusual traffic around abandoned mining sites and an old airstrip outside town, both recently purchased by a shell corporation with offshore ties. Her phone buzzed. It was Eleanor from the diner. "Sheriff, thought you'd want to know. Those bikers? They've been hanging around for 2 weeks. Small groups at first, but now it feels organized." "Has anyone approached you directly?" Alex asked. "Not me," Eleanor said, her voice low. "But Carl over at the gas station? They offered him protection. Told him times are changing." Alex's fingers tightened around the phone. The Ghost Legion wasn't just passing through. They were establishing dominance. And they weren't acting alone. As Alex ended the call, a knock came at the door. Riley entered, holding another file. "State police sent this over," he said, setting it on her desk. 3 overdoses in Copper Canyon last month. New synthetic drug. Victims all had ties to businesses hit by Ghost Legion. Alex flipped through the toxicology reports, her mind racing. This wasn't just about intimidation or property damage. The Ghost Legion was part of something much larger, a coordinated effort to establish a foothold for drug distribution. Her phone buzzed again. A text from Diana Martinez, her old contact at the State Bureau of Investigation. "Check your email. Found something in Hawthorne's financials." Alex's jaw tightened as she opened the encrypted email. The bank records were damning. Regular deposits into Hawthorne's account, just under reporting thresholds. Laundered money. She glanced at the satellite images again, focusing on the mining sites. The cartel wasn't just using Whispering Pines for distribution. They were building an infrastructure, one that involved corrupt officials like Hawthorne. Alex leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. The Ghost Legion and the cartel thought they were dealing with a small-town sheriff. They had no idea they were facing someone who had spent 2 decades dismantling operations just like theirs. A storm was brewing over Whispering Pines, and Alexandra Winters was ready to bring the lightning. The sun rose over Whispering Pines, bathing the streets in golden light. To the untrained eye, the town looked peaceful, but Alex knew better. Beneath the surface, something dark was taking root, spreading like rot. She stood by her patrol car outside the station, coffee in hand, watching the first trickle of morning activity. Her thoughts returned to the previous day's confrontation with Ghost Legion. The biker gang's sudden appearance and veiled threats were troubling enough, but the cartel ties made it worse. If the information from Eleanor and Riley's files was accurate, the Ghost Legion wasn't the real threat. They were just the muscle. "Sheriff." Riley's voice broke through her thoughts. He stood on the station steps, holding a folder. "You need to see this." Inside, Riley laid out maps and photographs on her desk. "I followed up on the property purchases you flagged," he explained. "This shell company, 7 Holdings, owns the old mines, the airstrip, and now half the warehouse district." Alex examined the documents. The transactions were cleverly disguised, with money trails leading to offshore accounts. It was professional, far beyond the capabilities of a local gang. And it gets worse, Riley continued. Chief Hawthorne filed a request this morning to take jurisdiction over the Henderson Ranch incidents. He claims it's connected to a string of minor thefts in Copper Canyon. Alex frowned. He's trying to box us out. That's not all, Riley added, lowering his voice. State police intercepted a message last night, encrypted cartel communication. It mentioned a shipment coming through the area. They think Whispering Pines is being set up as a distribution hub. Alex's grip tightened on the edge of the desk. Hawthorne's covering for them. He's got to be. That afternoon, Alex visited Eleanor's diner, a trusted landmark in town. Eleanor Chun, the sharp-eyed owner, greeted her with a knowing look. Coffee? Eleanor asked, pouring a fresh cup before Alex could answer. Alex nodded, sliding onto a stool. You've always had a good read on the pulse of this town. What's changed? Eleanor leaned against the counter, her voice low. People are scared. Not just the usual stuff. This is different. Business owners don't want to talk, and folks are keeping their heads down. But I'll tell you this, those bikers? They're not here for a joyride. Have they approached anyone else? Alex asked. Carl at the gas station. Miguel heard something at the garage. They're testing the waters, feeling out who they can scare. Eleanor's expression darkened. And I saw Hawthorne meet with them. Late at night, behind the old mill. Alex froze. Hawthorne met with the Ghost Legion? Eleanor nodded. Miguel swears on it. Said they looked pretty cozy, talking about clearing the way. Returning to the station, Alex found a message waiting on her desk. It was from Diana Martinez, her old contact at the State Bureau of Investigation. The contents were damning. Hawthorne had been receiving regular deposits from an account linked to known cartel fronts. Riley, Alex called, summoning her deputy. Get me everything you can on Hawthorne, his deputies, his movements, and his financials. If we're going to prove he's working with the cartel, we need solid evidence. As Riley nodded and left, Alex's phone buzzed with another text from Diana. Your cartel connection runs deeper than you think. Meet me at the usual place. Alex drove out to a secluded clearing on the outskirts of town. Diana was already there, leaning against her car. The seasoned investigator looked tired but determined. I pulled strings to get this, Diana said, handing over a manila folder. The cartel's setting up Whispering Pines as a staging ground. Drugs, human trafficking, maybe worse. Hawthorne's in their pocket, and the Ghost Legion is just the tip of the spear. What about the cartel leadership? Alex asked. Diana shook her head. They're ghosts. The people running this are using layers of intermediaries and fake companies. But I found one name, El Coyote. He's their enforcer, and if he's here, things are worse than we thought. That night, Alex worked late, poring over the evidence. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together, but there was still so much she didn't know. Every lead pointed to a larger operation, one that could swallow Whispering Pines whole if left unchecked. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. Riley entered, looking shaken. What is it? Alex asked. We've got company, Riley said. Ghost Legion. They're at the Henderson Ranch. Alex arrived at the ranch to find the barn ablaze, flames licking the sky. Ghost Legion bikers circled the property, their engines roaring like a pack of wolves. Stay here, Alex ordered Riley as she stepped out of her patrol car. Blade dismounted his bike, walking toward her with a swagger. Evening, Sheriff. Beautiful night, isn't it? What the hell do you think you're doing? Alex demanded. Just reminding folks who's in charge, Blade replied, his tone mocking. Behind him, Tank and Snake stood silently, their hands resting on their weapons. This stops now, Alex said, her voice firm. Blade smirked. You think you can stop us? You don't even know what you're up against. As Blade turned to leave, Alex called after him. I know more than you think. Like how you're running protection rackets for a cartel that doesn't give a damn about you. Blade froze, his hand clenching into a fist. For the first time, Alex saw uncertainty in his eyes. Without another word, he mounted his bike and roared away, his gang following close behind. Back at the station, Alex and Riley reviewed footage from the ranch fire. They're sending a message, Riley said. But why escalate now? Because they know we're onto them, Alex replied. And they're scared. She glanced at the map of Whispering Pines, her mind racing. The cartel and their Ghost Legion enforcers thought they could intimidate her into silence. But they had underestimated her resolve and her experience. As the clock ticked toward midnight, Alex made a decision. She would strike first, using everything she learned from her years in INSCOM. The Ghost Legion, the cartel, and even Hawthorne wouldn't know what hit them. The sun rose sluggishly over Whispering Pines, as if hesitant to bring light to the growing darkness creeping through the town. Alex sipped her coffee in silence at her desk, the events of the previous night replaying in her mind. The fire at Henderson Ranch was more than an escalation. It was a declaration of war. Her phone buzzed with a notification. Diana Martinez had sent her a new batch of files, financial records linking Chief Hawthorne to several suspicious wire transfers. The pattern was clear. Hawthorne wasn't just looking the other way. He was actively facilitating the cartel's operations. Alex's focus was interrupted by the sound of Riley's voice in the hall, talking to someone in a hushed tone. Moments later, he appeared in the doorway. "Sheriff," Riley said, looking uneasy. "Eleanor's diner got hit last night. They left a message." At the diner, the smell of smoke still lingered. The front windows were shattered, and scorch marks stained the walls where Molotov cocktails had been thrown. Eleanor stood by the counter, her face pale but defiant. "They came just before dawn," she explained. 6 of them on bikes. Broke the windows, threw the cocktails, then sped off. Miguel tried to stop them. He's in the hospital, concussion, 2 broken ribs. "Did you recognize any of them?" Alex asked. "They wore masks," Eleanor replied. "But their leader, he had a police radio. I heard him call someone named Hawthorne, asking if the coast was clear." Alex's jaw tightened. Eleanor's words confirmed what she already suspected. Hawthorne was coordinating with the Ghost Legion. Back at the station, Alex gathered her team for an emergency briefing. "This isn't just about intimidation anymore," Alex said, her voice steady but firm. "The Ghost Legion and the cartel are escalating because they know we're closing in." Riley shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "What's the plan, Sheriff?" Alex pointed to a map of the town. "We need to secure our witnesses and tighten our surveillance on the cartel's operations. They're moving something big, and I want to know what it is before it's too late." As the meeting ended, Riley lingered behind. "Sheriff, about Eleanor's diner," he began, avoiding her gaze. "What about it?" Alex asked. Riley hesitated. "I think we need to be careful. If Hawthorne's really involved, this could go deeper than we think." Alex studied him for a moment, her instincts tingling. Something about Riley's tone was off, but she let it go for now. That evening, Alex drove out to the old mining tunnels. The abandoned site had been flagged in several of Diana's reports as a possible cartel staging ground. Armed with a flashlight and her service weapon, Alex descended into the dark, damp tunnels. Her heart pounded as she moved deeper into the labyrinth, the faint sound of voices growing louder with each step. "Shipment arrives tomorrow night," a man was saying. "We've got everything ready," another voice replied. "No one's going to stop this." Alex crept closer, her training kicking in as she positioned herself to see without being seen. 2 men stood by a stack of crates marked with unfamiliar symbols. One of them was Snake, one of Blade's enforcers. Alex reached for her radio, but before she could call it in, the sound of footsteps behind her froze her in place. She turned just in time to see a figure emerge from the shadows. "Riley, what are you doing here?" Alex whispered, her voice sharp. "I followed you," Riley said, his expression unreadable. "I wanted to help." Before Alex could respond, the men ahead of them stopped talking. Snake's voice echoed through the tunnel. "Who's there?" The sound of a weapon cocking sent a jolt of adrenaline through Alex. She grabbed Riley and pulled him behind a nearby pillar as Snake and the other man advanced, flashlights cutting through the darkness. "Stay here," Alex whispered, drawing her gun. Moving silently, she circled around, using the tunnel's twists and turns to her advantage. When Snake's light passed over her hiding spot, she acted. "Drop it," Alex commanded, stepping into the light with her weapon raised. Snake hesitated for a moment, then smirked. "Well, look who it is." The sheriff herself? The other man made a move for his gun, but Alex fired a warning shot into the ground. Next one goes in your leg, she warned. Drop it now. Snake complied, his smirk fading as Alex cuffed him. Riley emerged from his hiding spot, his hands trembling. You got them. Alex shot him a look. This isn't over yet. Call it in. We need backup to secure the area. Back at the station, Alex interrogated Snake while Riley looked on. You're part of something big, Alex said. Bigger than you realize. You think the cartel cares about you? You're disposable. Snake sneered. You don't know anything? Try me, Alex countered. I know about the airstrip, the warehouses, the shell companies. I know about Hawthorne. For a moment, Snake's confidence wavered. Then he leaned back in his chair, his smirk returning. You think you're so smart, don't you? You have no idea what's coming. Before Alex could press him further, Riley stepped into the hallway, muttering something about paperwork. Later that night, Alex reviewed the evidence they'd gathered so far. Her gut told her something was off, but she couldn't put her finger on it. Her phone buzzed with a text from Diana. Riley's been making calls. To someone in Copper Canyon. Be careful. Alex's blood ran cold. Riley wasn't just nervous, he was compromised. The next morning, Alex confronted Riley at the station. Who are you working for? She demanded, slamming a file onto his desk. Riley's face turned pale. Sheriff, Don't lie to me, Alex snapped. I know you've been talking to Hawthorne. I know you've been feeding him information. Riley looked down, guilt written all over his face. I didn't have a choice. They threatened my family. Alex's anger flared, but she forced herself to stay calm. You could have come to me. We could have protected them. They said they'd kill them if I didn't cooperate, Riley said, his voice trembling. Alex leaned in, her voice low and firm. You're going to help me bring them down. And if you so much as think about betraying me again, I'll make sure you're the one going to prison. Riley nodded, tears in his eyes. That night, Alex stood on the outskirts of Whispering Pines, staring into the dark horizon. The cartel, Ghost Legion, Hawthorne, even Riley, they all thought they could outsmart her. But Alex had faced worse enemies before, and she wasn't about to let her town fall. The first betrayal had shaken her, but it also steeled her resolve. The storm brewing over Whispering Pines was about to break, and Alexandra Winters would be ready. The pre-dawn chill seeped into the abandoned mining tunnels, their damp walls bearing witness to decades of forgotten labor. Alex stood in the shadows near the main entrance, studying the maps spread out on the hood of her patrol car. With every new piece of intel, the picture of the cartel's operation grew clearer and more dangerous. Diana's latest report confirmed that the cartel was using the tunnels to store and move contraband, including drugs and possibly human cargo. The shipment Snake had hinted at during his interrogation was scheduled to pass through the tunnels tonight. Everything ready? Alex asked, glancing at Riley. He nodded, his face pale. Backups in place. FBI agents are stationed at the airstrip and the warehouse district. If this goes south, they're ready to move. Good, Alex said. We'll flush them out and cut off their escape routes. They won't know what hit them. Her confidence masked the unease simmering beneath the surface. Riley's betrayal still stung, but she had no choice but to rely on him now. He had the most intimate knowledge of the cartel's operations, and they were running out of time. Inside the tunnels, the atmosphere was suffocating, a mixture of damp earth and the faint scent of oil from recently used machinery. Alex led the way, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. Behind her, Riley and a small team of deputies moved cautiously, their weapons drawn. The first sign of trouble came quickly, a pair of infrared sensors mounted along the tunnel walls. Military grade, Riley muttered, crouching to inspect one. These weren't here a week ago. Cartel's upping their game, Alex replied. Let's hope they're as predictable as we think. Using her military training, Alex bypassed the sensors, motioning for the team to follow. As they advanced, the faint hum of machinery grew louder. They're close, Riley whispered, his voice barely audible. Alex nodded, signaling the group to fan out. Ahead, the tunnel widened into a large chamber where several figures were unloading crates from a truck. A makeshift workbench held high-end firearms, and the air crackled with the tension of organized chaos. 3 guards on the perimeter, Alex observed, her voice steady despite the adrenaline pumping through her veins. 2 by the truck, 1 near the exit. Before they could move, the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoed from behind. Alex spun around, her weapon raised, just as a group of armed men emerged from a side tunnel. "It's a trap!" she shouted, diving for cover as gunfire erupted. The firefight was brutal, the narrow tunnels amplifying every sound. Alex's team returned fire, holding their ground despite being outnumbered. Riley ducked behind a support beam, reloading his weapon. "They knew we were coming." "Focus," Alex barked, taking down a guard who had moved too close. One of the cartel operatives threw a smoke grenade, filling the tunnel with a thick, choking fog. Alex activated her thermal imaging goggles, scanning for movement. "They're retreating," she shouted. "Don't let them get away." As the smoke began to clear, Alex saw Snake among the fleeing operatives, shouting orders. He was leading the cartel's forces deeper into the tunnels, toward a hidden exit. "Riley, with me," Alex ordered, breaking into a run. Deeper into the labyrinth, the air grew colder, and the walls were slick with condensation. Alex's instincts screamed that something was wrong. They were being funneled, led into an ambush. "Sheriff, we need to fall back," Riley called out. "No," Alex replied, her voice resolute. "We push forward. They're protecting something." The tunnel opened into another chamber, this one larger and filled with more crates. Several were marked with biohazard symbols, while others bore the cartel's insignia. "This isn't just a smuggling route," Alex muttered. "It's a processing center." Before she could process the implications, a familiar voice echoed through the chamber. "Sheriff Winters, I was hoping we'd meet again." Blade stepped into the light, his smirk as smug as ever. Behind him, several armed men aimed their weapons at Alex and Riley. "Drop your guns," Blade ordered. Alex hesitated, her mind racing. She glanced at Riley, who looked as though he might break under the pressure. "Now," Blade barked, his voice sharper. Reluctantly, Alex lowered her weapon, signaling Riley to do the same. "Smart move," Blade said, stepping closer. "You've been a real thorn in our side, Sheriff. But this ends tonight." Blade's men secured Alex and Riley, binding their hands with zip ties and forcing them to their knees. "You're making a mistake," Alex said, her voice calm despite the situation. Blade crouched in front of her, his smirk widening. "I don't think so. You're the one who underestimated us." Alex met his gaze, her expression unflinching. "You think the cartel cares about you? You're nothing but expendable muscle to them." Blade's smile faltered for a moment, but he quickly recovered. "Doesn't matter. We're getting paid, and that's all that counts." Before Alex could respond, a deafening explosion rocked the chamber. Dust and debris rained down as a section of the tunnel collapsed, cutting off the cartel's escape route. "What the hell was that?" Blade shouted. "Your backup," Alex said, smiling grimly. FBI agents swarmed into the chamber, their tactical gear gleaming in the dim light. The cartel operatives opened fire, but they were outmatched. Blade's men fell one by one, their arrogance no match for the precision of the federal team. In the chaos, Alex and Riley managed to free themselves. Alex retrieved her weapon and joined the fight, her military training kicking in as she moved through the chamber with lethal efficiency. Blade attempted to flee but was intercepted by Alex. She tackled him to the ground, pinning him with her knee. "Going somewhere?" she asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Blade glared up at her, defeated. When the dust settled, the chamber was a scene of destruction. Several cartel members were in custody, including Blade, but Snake and a few others had escaped deeper into the tunnels. Alex stood over the crates, examining their contents. Inside were bags of synthetic drugs, medical equipment, and something far more sinister, documents detailing the trafficking of human cargo. "They weren't just smuggling drugs," Alex said, her voice grim. "They were moving people." Diana's voice crackled over the radio. "We've intercepted Snake's group near the airstrip. They're trying to secure a plane." "Hold them," Alex replied. "We're on our way." As Alex and Riley exited the tunnels, the first rays of dawn pierced the horizon. The night had been a hard-fought victory, but the battle was far from over. Alex knew the cartel would retaliate, and the stakes were higher than ever. Whispering Pines was no longer just a small-town battleground. It was ground zero in a war that would test everything she had left. The storm was growing darker, but Alex was ready to meet it head-on. The early morning air hung heavy over Whispering Pines as Alex walked out of the mining tunnels, her mind racing. The night's events had brought a small victory, but exposed an even grimmer reality. The cartel wasn't just trafficking drugs. They were moving people. At the station, Riley sat slumped in his chair, his head in his hands. The strain of the ambush weighed on him, but Alex wasn't ready to let him off the hook. "Riley," Alex said, her voice sharper than intended. "We need to talk about your next steps." He looked up, guilt etched across his face. "I'm in, Sheriff. Whatever it takes to fix this." "Good," Alex said, pulling out a map, "because things are about to get worse. Snake and the others got away, and they're still moving shipments. We need eyes everywhere, and I can't afford any more mistakes." Before Riley could respond, the station phone rang. Eleanor was on the line. "Sheriff, we've got company at the diner," she said. "And you're not going to believe who just walked in." When Alex arrived at Eleanor's diner, she found Marcus Blade Kane sitting in a booth, looking surprisingly casual for a man recently hauled off in cuffs. His hands were clasped in front of him, his trademark smirk firmly in place. "Morning, Sheriff," Blade said as Alex approached. "You've got quite a mess on your hands, don't you?" Alex folded her arms, unimpressed. "You're awfully confident for someone who should be in federal custody right now." Blade shrugged. "The feds let me go. Guess they didn't think I was worth holding on to." "Or you cut a deal," Alex countered. Blade's smirk widened. "You're sharp, Sheriff. That's why I'm here. I'm offering you a deal of my own." Alex leaned in, lowering her voice. "You've got about 10 seconds to explain why I shouldn't throw you in a cell right now." "Because the cartel's going to kill me," Blade said, his smirk fading. "And if you don't help me, they'll come after you next." Back at the station, Alex sat across from Blade in the interrogation room. The swagger was gone now, replaced by genuine fear. "Talk," Alex ordered. Blade took a deep breath. "The cartel's using Ghost Legion to clear the way, make the locals too scared to resist. But they don't trust us. We're just the muscle, disposable once they've got their operation running smoothly." "Tell me something I don't already know," Alex said, her patience wearing thin. Blade hesitated, then leaned forward. "The shipment Snake was guarding? It wasn't the only one. There's another coming through tonight, bigger, more important, and the cartel's sending in someone new to oversee it. A guy they call the Architect." Alex's eyes narrowed. Diana had mentioned the Architect, a cartel strategist known for designing flawless operations. If he was involved, the stakes were even higher. "Why are you telling me this?" Alex asked. Blade smirked faintly. "Because I want out. The cartel's got too much heat on them now, and I don't feel like dying for their cause. Help me disappear, and I'll give you everything I know." Alex leaned back in her chair, weighing her options. She didn't trust Blade, but his intel could be invaluable. "Fine," Alex said finally. "But if you lie to me, I'll make sure the cartel's the least of your worries." That evening, Alex convened her team. Diana joined via a secure video feed, her face tense as she reviewed Blade's information. "The Architect showing up changes everything," Diana said. "This guy's known for running operations like a military campaign. If he's here, they're doubling down." "What's the plan?" Riley asked, looking between Alex and the screen. Alex pointed to the map. "We intercept the shipment. Blade says it's coming through the old warehouse district, so we'll set up there. Riley, you'll coordinate with Eleanor to keep eyes on the streets. Diana, I need federal backup ready to move in on my signal." "What about Blade?" Diana asked. "I'll keep him close," Alex said. "If he's lying, I'll deal with him myself." The warehouse district was eerily quiet as Alex and her team moved into position. The crumbling buildings provided ample cover, but the labyrinthine layout made it easy to get trapped. "Eyes open," Alex said over the radio. "They'll have lookouts." As if on cue, Riley's voice crackled through the earpiece. I've got movement on the east side. 2 vehicles, SUVs. Looks like cartel. Hold your position, Alex ordered. The SUVs rolled into the warehouse yard, their headlights cutting through the darkness. Men in tactical gear emerged, scanning the area. Professional, Diana said over the comms. These aren't Ghost Legion. This is cartel muscle. Alex motioned for her team to spread out. The plan was simple. Wait for the shipment to arrive, then strike hard and fast. But as the minutes ticked by, something felt off. The cartel operatives weren't unloading anything. Instead, they were sweeping the area, as if looking for something or someone. They're expecting us, Alex realized. Before she could issue a new order, gunfire erupted from the opposite side of the yard. The scene descended into chaos as cartel operatives exchanged fire with an unknown group. Alex spotted familiar patches on the attackers' jackets. Ghost Legion. What the hell is going on? Riley shouted over the comms. Change of plans, Alex said, moving toward the fray. The cartel's cleaning house. Amid the gunfire, Alex spotted Blade crouched behind a stack of crates, shouting into a radio. Blade. Alex called, running to his position. They knew. Blade shouted back. They knew I flipped? A sudden explosion rocked the yard, sending debris flying. Alex hit the ground, her ears ringing as the world spun around her. When she regained her senses, Blade was gone, and the cartel operatives were retreating. Back at the station, Alex pieced together the night's events. The cartel wasn't moving a shipment, she said. They were baiting us. Why? Riley asked. To take out Blade and anyone working with him, Alex replied. We just walked into their trap. Her phone buzzed with a text from Diana. The architect isn't just running the operation. He's here to eliminate loose ends. Alex stared at the message, her resolve hardening. The cartel was playing a dangerous game, but so was she. They want to make this a war? Alex said, more to herself than anyone else. Fine, let's give them one. The morning after the chaos in the warehouse district, Whispering Pines awoke to the fallout of a battle that most residents didn't even realize had taken place. Alex stood outside the sheriff's station, the crisp mountain air doing little to clear the frustration building inside her. The cartel's trap had nearly worked, and Blade's disappearance left more questions than answers. Inside, Riley was already at his desk, sifting through reports. His face was pale, the pressure of the past weeks weighing on him visibly. Anything on Blade? Alex asked as she stepped in. Riley shook his head. Nothing. The man's a ghost. If the cartel didn't get him, he's in hiding. Or he's playing both sides, Alex muttered. She leaned over the table where they'd spread out maps, files, and intercepted communications. We're running out of time, Riley. The architect's here, and his endgame is in motion. We need to figure out what he's planning before this town becomes a graveyard. Hours later, Diana joined them on a secure video call, her tone grim. I've been analyzing the cartel's recent movements, she said. They've diverted resources from Copper Canyon and Whispering Pines to a location near the state border, a private airfield. If I had to guess, that's where they're consolidating their operation. Alex frowned. We've seen movement at that airfield before, but nothing this significant. What's changed? Diana hesitated. They're moving the operation. Whispering Pines was supposed to be a test site, but with Blade flipping and the Ghost Legion becoming unreliable, they're pulling out. The architect isn't here to build. He's here to destroy. The airfield is likely their staging ground for dismantling the network while covering their tracks. Riley leaned forward, his expression tense. Covering their tracks how? Diana's voice was grave. The cartel doesn't leave loose ends. If they're pulling out, that means eliminating witnesses, destroying evidence, and neutralizing anyone who could expose them, including us. As the team planned their next move, a call came in from Eleanor at the diner. Sheriff, Eleanor said, her voice low. Miguel just saw Ghost Legion bikers headed toward the south side. Looks like they're clearing out one of their safe houses. Riley, Alex said, grabbing her keys, you're with me. Diana, keep digging. If that airfield's their staging ground, I want confirmation by the time we're back. The safe house on the south side was a nondescript building tucked behind a row of abandoned warehouses. As Alex and Riley approached, they saw two Ghost Legion bikers loading crates into a van. "Wait," Alex whispered, motioning for Riley to stay back. She crept closer, her weapon drawn. The bikers were arguing, their voices carrying in the stillness. "This isn't how it's supposed to go," one said. "We were promised protection." "The cartel doesn't care about promises," the other replied. "You know what happens if we don't finish this." Alex stepped out of the shadows, her gun trained on them. "Drop it. Now." Both men froze, their hands hovering near their weapons. "You don't want to do this," Alex said, her voice steady. "I've already taken down enough of your friends. Don't make me add you to the list." One of the bikers hesitated, then dropped his gun. The other followed suit. "Smart choice," Alex said, motioning for Riley to secure them. Inside the safe house, Alex and Riley found more crates packed with drugs and firearms, along with a stack of documents. Alex sifted through the papers, her heart sinking as she realized what they contained. "Their schedules," she said. "Flight manifests, supply routes, names. This is the logistics blueprint for the entire operation." Riley frowned. "Why would they leave this behind?" "They didn't," Alex said, her stomach nodding. "This was staged. They wanted us to find this." As if on cue, the sound of engines roared outside. Alex peeked through a crack in the boarded-up window to see SUVs pulling into the lot. "Cartel," she said. "They're here to clean house, and us with it." The next few minutes were a blur of action. Alex and Riley barricaded the doors as cartel operatives surrounded the building, their movements precise and coordinated. "Sheriff," Riley said, his voice shaking, "what's the plan?" Alex glanced at the crates of weapons. "We make them regret coming here." Using her military training, Alex rigged an improvised trap, wiring the door to detonate one of the crates when breached. When the cartel operatives forced the door, the explosion rocked the building, sending debris flying. Alex and Riley used the chaos to their advantage, taking out the disoriented attackers one by one. By the time backup arrived, the safe house was a scene of destruction. Several cartel operatives were dead or in custody, but Alex's victory felt hollow. "This wasn't just an attack," she said to Riley as they surveyed the aftermath. "It was a distraction. The architect's playing with us." Riley's radio crackled to life. Diana's voice came through, urgent. "Alex, we've got a problem. The airfield's active. Surveillance confirms heavy traffic, trucks, planes, and a lot of armed men." Alex's heart sank. "How much time do we have?" "Not enough," Diana replied. "If they're moving the operation, this is our last chance to stop them." That night, Alex gathered her team for what she knew could be their final stand. "We hit the airfield at dawn," she said. "This is our only shot to bring down the cartel's operation and stop the architect." Riley nodded, but his expression was grim. "What if we're too late?" Alex's voice was firm. "Then we make sure they don't walk away clean. No more distractions, no more games. We end this." The first light of dawn bathed Whispering Pines in a pale orange glow as Alex and her team prepared for their most critical operation yet. The private airfield, nestled in a secluded valley just outside the state border, was bustling with cartel activity. Trucks loaded with contraband rolled onto the tarmac, while armed operatives patrolled the perimeter with military precision. Alex stood by her SUV, addressing her team. Diana had driven in overnight with a small group of federal agents, reinforcing their thin ranks. Riley and a handful of trusted deputies completed the lineup. "This isn't just another operation," Alex said, her voice steady but firm. "If we fail here, the cartel gets away clean, their network intact. But if we succeed, we shut them down for good." Diana added, "The architect is running this personally, which means he's committed to burning the operation behind him. Expect heavy resistance. They'll be ready for anything." Alex locked eyes with her team, her resolve unwavering. "Then let's give them something they won't expect." The first phase of the operation began with a series of controlled explosions at the eastern perimeter, courtesy of Diana's team. The blasts sent cartel operatives scrambling, drawing attention away from the primary targets. "Phase 1 complete," Diana reported over the radio. "They're moving east to intercept. You're clear to advance." Alex's group slipped through a gap in the fence, their movements silent and deliberate. The control tower loomed ahead, its windows glowing faintly with the light of computer screens. "Two guards at the base," Alex whispered, motioning for Riley to follow. In a synchronized takedown, Alex and Riley neutralized the guards, dragging their unconscious bodies out of sight. Inside the control tower, the tension was palpable. Cartel operatives manned sophisticated communication equipment, their voices sharp as they coordinated the defense of the airfield. Alex signaled to her team, her movements precise. Within seconds, they stormed the tower, taking down the operatives before they could sound the alarm. "Tower secure," Alex reported. "Cutting communications now." Riley disabled the radios while Alex accessed the main computer. What she found confirmed their worst fears. "They've already started loading the planes," she said. "If they get airborne, we'll lose them." Diana's voice crackled through the radio. "We're seeing movement near the hangars. Looks like they're preparing for liftoff." "Not on my watch," Alex said, grabbing her weapon. "Riley, stay here and keep the comms down. Diana, regroup with me at the main hangar." The scene at the hangar was chaos. Cartel operatives were loading crates onto a large cargo plane, their movements hurried and frantic. Trucks idled nearby, their engines rumbling as more supplies were unloaded. Alex and Diana coordinated their teams for a pincer assault, striking from both sides of the hangar. The initial attack caught the cartel by surprise, but they quickly regrouped, returning fire with brutal efficiency. Pinned behind a stack of crates, Alex surveyed the battlefield. The architect was nowhere in sight, but his presence was felt in the precision of the cartel's response. "They're well-trained," Diana said, firing off a round. "This isn't Ghost Legion. These are professionals." "That just means we hit them harder," Alex replied, her voice cold. As the firefight raged, Alex spotted a familiar face among the chaos. Snake, the Ghost Legion enforcer who had escaped the tunnels. He was barking orders, his demeanor desperate. "Snake's here," Alex called to Diana. "I'm going after him." Moving with calculated precision, Alex advanced through the hangar, using the confusion to her advantage. She cornered Snake near the cargo plane, her weapon trained on him. "Drop it," Alex commanded. Snake hesitated, then smirked. "You think you've won, Sheriff? You're too late. The architect doesn't lose." "Where is he?" Alex demanded. Snake laughed. "You'll find out soon enough." Before Alex could react, Snake lunged at her, a knife glinting in his hand. She sidestepped the attack, countering with a swift strike that sent him sprawling. "You're done," Alex said, cuffing him. With Snake secured, Alex turned her attention to the cargo plane. Cartel operatives were still loading crates, but their movements were panicked as Diana's team closed in. "We need to ground that plane," Alex said over the radio. "On it," Riley replied. Moments later, an explosion rocked the tarmac as Riley disabled the plane's landing gear. The cartel's morale crumbled as the realization set in. They weren't getting out. Amid the chaos, Alex spotted a man in a tailored suit stepping out of an SUV near the far end of the airfield. His calm demeanor stood in stark contrast to the mayhem around him. "The architect," Alex muttered. She moved toward him, her steps deliberate. As she closed the distance, the architect turned to face her, a faint smile on his lips. "Sheriff Winters," he said, his tone polite. "You've caused quite the inconvenience." "Your operation's finished," Alex said, her weapon raised. The architect chuckled. "You think so? You've only scratched the surface. The real network extends far beyond this little town." "We'll find it," Alex replied, "and we'll burn it to the ground." The architect's expression hardened. "Perhaps, but not today." Before Alex could react, a group of cartel operatives emerged from the shadows, their weapons trained on her. The standoff was tense, each side waiting for the other to make a move. "You won't walk away from this," Alex said, her voice steady. The architect smirked. "Neither will you." Suddenly, gunfire erupted from the perimeter as Diana's team arrived, flanking the cartel operatives. In the chaos, the architect slipped away, disappearing into the shadows. "Damn it," Alex cursed, scanning the area. By the time the dust settled, the airfield was secure. The cartel's operation had been dismantled, their cargo seized, and dozens of operatives arrested. But Alex's victory felt incomplete. The architect had escaped, and his words lingered in her mind. As dawn broke over Whispering Pines, Alex stood on the tarmac, her resolve unshaken. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. The sky over Whispering Pines was a steely gray as Alex returned to the station, her body aching from the airfield assault. The cartel's operation had been dealt a significant blow, but the architect's escape left a bitter taste in her mouth. His cryptic words about the network's reach echoed in her mind as she stared at the confiscated crates stacked in the evidence room. Diana entered, holding a laptop and several folders. Her face was grim. "You're not going to like this," she said, setting the materials on Alex's desk. "What now?" Alex asked, leaning forward. Diana opened her laptop, displaying a map with several red markers scattered across the northwest. These are locations tied to the cartel's operation: warehouses, safehouses, and distribution hubs. All of them have gone dark in the past 24 hours. Alex's jaw tightened. "They're shutting everything down?" "Not just shutting down," Diana continued. "Burning it all. We've intercepted reports of explosions, fires, and missing personnel. This isn't a retreat. It's a purge." "They're covering their tracks," Alex said, her tone icy. "What about the airfield intel? Did we get anything useful?" Diana hesitated. "Some. Enough to identify a few mid-level players. But the top brass? They're ghosts. And the architect's name isn't in any of the records." Alex clenched her fists. "He's not just erasing the operation. He's erasing himself." Riley knocked on the doorframe, his expression wary. "Sheriff, you should see this." Alex followed him to the bullpen, where a monitor displayed live footage from Eleanor's diner. A black SUV sat parked outside, its tinted windows reflecting the overcast sky. "That's cartel," Riley said. "I'll handle it," Alex replied, grabbing her jacket. At the diner, Eleanor was already on edge as Alex entered. The SUV remained parked, its engine idling. "Who's in there?" Alex asked. "Two guys," Eleanor said, her voice low. "They came in, ordered coffee, didn't say a word. Miguel's in the back, keeping an eye on them." Alex approached the table where the two men sat, their suits and cold stares a sharp contrast to the cozy diner. "You're a long way from home," Alex said, her voice even. One of the men, older and with a scar running down his cheek, looked up. "Sheriff Winters," he said, his tone measured. "We were hoping to speak with you." Alex folded her arms. "You've got 2 minutes." The man leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "We know you're after the architect." "So are we." Alex raised an eyebrow. "And who's we?" The man didn't answer directly. Instead, he slid a card across the table. It bore a single emblem, a coyote silhouetted against a sun, and a name: El Coyote. "Your cartel," Alex said, her voice low. "Not exactly," the man replied. "We're part of a faction that's less aligned with the architect's vision. His operation has drawn too much attention, jeopardizing our interests. We want him eliminated as much as you do." Alex's instinct screamed not to trust him, but his words intrigued her. "Why come to me?" "Because you've disrupted his plans," the man said. "You've exposed weaknesses we didn't think possible. We can help you finish the job." "And what do you get out of it?" Alex asked. "The architect gone," the man said simply. Before Alex could respond, the sound of an engine revving outside drew her attention. She glanced out the window to see another SUV speeding toward the diner. "Get down," she shouted. The first SUV's windshield shattered as gunfire erupted. Alex ducked behind the counter, pulling Eleanor with her as bullets tore through the diner. "They're here for us," the scarred man shouted, drawing a handgun and returning fire. Alex peered over the counter, assessing the situation. The attacking vehicle was reinforced, its passengers armed with automatic weapons. "We're pinned," Eleanor yelled. "Not for long," Alex replied, grabbing a shotgun from beneath the counter. With precision born of years in the military, Alex fired at the attackers, aiming for the vehicle's tires. Her shots landed true, and the SUV skidded to a halt, its front end smashing into a lamppost. The remaining assailants retreated, leaving the diner in chaos. Back at the station, Alex interrogated the scarred man, who now sported a bandage on his arm. This is why you don't trust cartel factions, Alex said. They weren't ours, the man insisted. The architect has his own team, professionals who clean up loose ends. They were here for both of us. Alex studied him for a moment. If you're serious about taking him down, you'll give me everything you know. The man hesitated, then nodded. There's a meeting tonight. High-level operators discussing how to handle the fallout. The architect will be there. Where? Alex demanded. A cabin in Copper Canyon, the man said. But you didn't hear it from me. That evening, Alex prepared her team for the raid. Diana was skeptical. This could be a trap, Diana warned. Probably is, Alex replied. But it's the best lead we've got. The team rolled out under cover of darkness, their vehicles cutting through the winding mountain roads toward Copper Canyon. The cabin was perched on a remote hillside, its lights glowing faintly through the trees. Alex and her team moved in silence, their weapons ready. Through binoculars, Alex spotted several figures inside, one of whom matched the architect's description. He's here, Alex whispered. The plan was simple: breach, secure the targets, and extract the architect for questioning. But as they moved closer, Alex noticed something that made her stomach drop. Wires running along the ground, connected to hidden charges. It's rigged, she said, signaling her team to halt. As if on cue, the architect stepped onto the cabin's porch, a smug smile on his face. You've been a worthy opponent, Sheriff, he called out. But this is where the game ends. Before Alex could respond, the charges detonated, the cabin erupting in a fiery explosion. The blast knocked her off her feet, the shockwave rippling through the forest. Through the haze of smoke and debris, Alex struggled to her feet, coughing. The cabin was engulfed in flames, but there was no sign of the architect. He's gone, Diana said, her voice tight. Alex's radio crackled. Sheriff, we've got movement on the South Ridge, Riley reported. Alex turned, her eyes narrowing. He's not getting away this time. The pursuit through the forest was relentless, Alex and her team navigating the rugged terrain with determination. When they finally caught up to the architect, he was cornered at the edge of a cliff, the distant lights of Whispering Pines visible below. It's over, Alex said, her weapon trained on him. The architect smirked. You think this ends with me? Before Alex could respond, the architect stepped backward, disappearing into the darkness below. The silence that followed was deafening. Alex stood at the cliff's edge, her heart pounding. The architect was gone, but his operation was still unraveling. Back at the station, Alex reviewed the night's events, her resolve stealing. He wanted us to think this was over, she said to Diana. But this is just the beginning. The dawn following the pursuit of the architect cast a pale, somber light over Whispering Pines. The explosion at the cabin had been felt miles away, but the enigmatic cartel strategist had vanished into the forest like a shadow. Alex stood on the porch of the sheriff's station, sipping coffee and running through the events in her mind. The architect was elusive, but his words haunted her. You think this ends with me? Diana arrived with fresh intel, her expression grim as she held up a flash drive. We recovered this from one of the cartel operatives' laptops at the airfield, Diana said. It's encrypted, but I've already started breaking it. It's big, Alex. I can feel it. Alex nodded, setting her coffee aside. Then let's get to work. Inside the station, Diana connected the drive to a secure laptop. Lines of code scrolled across the screen as she decrypted the files. Got it, she said after several tense minutes. This isn't just logistics, it's a playbook. Every major trafficking hub in the region, the shell companies they're using, even names of officials on their payroll. Alex leaned over her shoulder, scanning the data. This connects everything. If we get this into federal hands, we can take down the entire network. There's more, Diana said, clicking on a file labeled Silent Tide. The document detailed plans for infiltrating small towns across the country, replicating the Whispering Pines model to create a nationwide trafficking network. It was horrifyingly efficient, combining corruption, intimidation, and calculated violence to keep local authorities powerless. Alex's fist clenched. This is what the architect meant. Whispering Pines was just a test. They're scaling up. Before they could dig further, Riley burst into the room, his face pale. "We've got a situation," he said. "A federal agent just showed up at Eleanor's diner. Says he needs to speak with you immediately." "Did he give a name?" Alex asked. Riley shook his head. "But he's not alone. There's a team with him." At the diner, Alex found the agent sitting at a corner booth. He was tall and lean, his dark suit impeccably pressed. A small group of heavily armed operatives stood nearby, their presence a stark contrast to the cozy atmosphere of the diner. "Sheriff Winters," the agent said, standing as she approached. "Agent Collier, Homeland Security." Alex didn't offer her hand. "I wasn't expecting visitors." Collier smirked. "We're here because of you. Your raid at the airfield and that little stunt at the cabin got the attention of people way above my pay grade." Alex folded her arms. "So what do you want?" Collier's expression turned serious. "To clean this up before it becomes a national embarrassment. We're taking over your case." Alex stiffened. "With all due respect, Agent, you've had years to stop this network, and you didn't. Now that we've exposed it, you want to swoop in and claim credit?" Collier's smirk returned. "It's not about credit. It's about control. You're playing a dangerous game, Sheriff, and you're out of your depth." Alex leaned in, her voice low and sharp. "You think you can walk in here and push us aside? Not happening. This is my town, my people, and I'm not stepping down." Collier's eyes narrowed. "Then I suggest you watch your back. The cartel isn't the only one with eyes on you." Back at the station, Alex vented her frustration. "They want to bury this," she said, pacing. "Collier doesn't care about justice. He cares about keeping things quiet." Diana nodded. "We can't let them take the files. If they do, this all disappears." Alex made a decision. "We're going public. We leak the information to trusted journalists, people who can't be silenced. If the world sees what's happening, they won't be able to cover it up." That night, Alex's team worked tirelessly to compile the evidence into a comprehensive dossier. They encrypted the files and prepared them for distribution, identifying key reporters and whistleblower platforms. As they finalized the plan, Riley's radio crackled. "Sheriff, you've got visitors outside." Alex grabbed her weapon and headed to the door. Outside, 2 black SUVs idled near the station, their occupants watching silently. Alex approached, her hand resting on her holstered gun. The driver of the lead vehicle stepped out, revealing the architect. His tailored suit was immaculate despite the chaos of recent days. "Sheriff Winters," he said with a faint smile. "We meet again." Alex's heart pounded, but she kept her composure. "You've got a lot of nerve showing up here." "I came to offer you a deal," the architect replied. "Call off your crusade, and I'll ensure Whispering Pines is left alone. No more violence, no more retaliation." Alex scoffed. "You think I'd trust you? After everything you've done?" The architect's smile faded. "You don't have to trust me. But consider this. If you release that information, you won't just be taking down the cartel. You'll be exposing a system of corruption that goes much higher than you realize. The fallout will be catastrophic." "Good," Alex said coldly. "Maybe it's time for a reckoning." The architect's eyes hardened. "You're making a mistake. This war doesn't end with me. If you push forward, you'll paint a target on your back, and everyone you care about." Alex stepped closer, her voice unwavering. "Then you'd better aim carefully." The architect left without further confrontation, but his words lingered. Back inside, Alex relayed the encounter to her team. "He's scared," Diana said. "He knows what we're about to do." "Let him be scared," Alex replied. "He's about to lose everything." By midnight, the dossier was ready. Alex and Diana uploaded it to secure servers, sending it to trusted journalists and whistleblower platforms. Within hours, the information began to spread, the network's secrets unraveling for the world to see. But the celebration was short-lived. At 3 a.m., the station's alarms blared. Alex and her team scrambled as the power cut out, plunging the building into darkness. "They're here," Riley said, gripping his weapon. Through the windows, Alex saw shadows moving, professional operatives advancing on the station. "This isn't the cartel," Diana said, her voice tense. "This is something else." Alex's jaw tightened. "It's Collier. He's cleaning up." The assault on the station was swift and brutal. Alex and her team held their ground, but the attackers were highly trained and well-equipped. Amid the chaos, Alex realized their objective: the servers containing the original copies of the cartel's data. "They're after the files," she shouted. Diana worked frantically to secure the servers, while Alex led her team in a desperate defense. The firefight raged, the station's walls splintering under the onslaught. By dawn, the attackers had withdrawn, leaving the station battered but standing. The files were intact, but the cost was high. Alex surveyed the damage, her determination burning brighter than ever. "They tried to bury this," she said, "but now the whole world knows. They can't stop us." Diana placed a hand on her shoulder. "The fight's not over. The cartel, Collier, whoever's pulling the strings, they're still out there." Alex nodded. "Then we keep fighting. We end this, no matter what it takes." The first rays of sunlight broke over Whispering Pines, illuminating the scarred sheriff station. Inside, Alex and her team prepared for what they knew would be their final battle. The cartel's network was exposed, the files were public, and federal attention was now unavoidable. But the backlash had been swift, and the enemies were closing in. Diana, working on her laptop amidst the chaos of the aftermath, looked up. The files are everywhere now. News outlets, whistleblower sites, even international agencies are picking it up. But the pushback has started. Alex leaned against the desk, her expression steely. "Pushback. Counter-narratives," Diana replied. "Anonymous sources discrediting the evidence, claiming it's fabricated. Someone's trying to contain the damage." "They're stalling for time," Alex said. "If they can delay long enough, they'll regroup and erase the rest of their tracks." A knock on the door drew their attention. Eleanor entered, her face pale but resolute. "There's word around town," she said. "Miguel heard it first. More operatives are heading this way. They're not just coming for you. They're coming to finish what the architect started." Riley stood, gripping his holstered weapon. "Then we make our stand here. This town deserves better than to be someone's collateral damage." Alex shook her head. "We don't wait for them to come to us. We take the fight to them." Alex gathered her team, now reinforced by a small contingent of federal agents who had remained loyal after seeing the cartel's true reach. Diana projected a satellite image of the airfield and surrounding regions. "There's movement at one of their secondary sites, an old shipping depot just over the state line. Trucks, personnel, and heavily encrypted communications. It's their fallback point." Alex nodded. "And the architect?" Diana hesitated. "If he's smart, he won't be there. But if this is their last stronghold, he might not have a choice." The convoy rolled out at dusk, Alex riding in the lead SUV. The drive was tense, every mile bringing them closer to what could be their final confrontation. As they approached the depot, Alex's instincts kicked in. "Cut the lights," she ordered. The vehicle slowed, their headlights going dark as they stopped on a ridge overlooking the facility. Through binoculars, Alex surveyed the site. "It's heavily fortified," she said. "Snipers on the rooftops, patrols every 30 yards, and motion sensors along the perimeter." Riley grimaced. "They're expecting us." "They always are," Alex replied. "That's why we use what they don't expect." Using the cover of darkness, Alex divided her team into 3 groups. Diana would lead a small tech unit to disable the depot's communications. Riley's squad would create a diversion at the main gate, drawing attention away from Alex's infiltration team. As Diana moved into position, Alex gave the signal. Riley's team opened fire on the gate, the sudden chaos throwing the depot into disarray. Inside, Alex and her team slipped through a drainage tunnel, emerging near the central warehouse. The sounds of gunfire and shouting echoed through the compound, masking their movements. In the warehouse, Alex found crates of contraband, drugs, weapons, and even documents detailing future operations. "This is it," she said, motioning for her team to secure the area. But as they worked, a familiar voice echoed from the shadows. "Well played, Sheriff." Alex turned, her weapon raised. The architect stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 operatives. His suit was immaculate, his demeanor calm. "You've been a thorn in my side for far too long," he said. "But you should have taken my offer when you had the chance." Alex smirked. "And missed this moment?" "Not a chance." The architect's expression darkened. You think you've won, but you've only exposed a fraction of what we control. You'll never stop the tide. We'll see about that, Alex replied. Before he could respond, Diana's voice crackled through Alex's earpiece. Alex, we've got a problem. Reinforcements are inbound, heavily armed. How many? Alex asked, her eyes never leaving the architect. Too many, Diana said. We need to move now. The architect chuckled. Looks like you're out of time, Sheriff. Alex fired without hesitation, grazing his leg. The architect collapsed with a pained grunt as his operatives returned fire. Secure him. Alex barked as her team neutralized the threat. With the architect in custody, Alex's team raced to extract the evidence and retreat. Outside, the sounds of reinforcements drew closer, vehicles roaring and orders being shouted. Move! Alex shouted as they loaded the last of the crates into their SUVs. Riley covered the rear, his weapon blazing as the first wave of reinforcements arrived. We're not going to hold them off much longer. The convoy tore down the highway, pursued by cartel vehicles. Bullets shattered windows and pinged off the armored sides of the SUVs. Diana worked frantically from her laptop. I've sent the files to every major outlet. It's over for them. Even if we don't make it out, this is done. We're making it out, Alex said, her tone ironclad. She pulled a hard turn onto a narrow mountain road, leading the cartel pursuers into an ambush. Waiting federal agents opened fire, decimating the enemy vehicles in a hail of bullets. By dawn, the battle was over. The depot was secured, the architect was in custody, and the cartel's last stronghold in the region had fallen. As federal agents swept the area, Alex stood by the architect, who sat in handcuffs, his face pale but defiant. You lost, Alex said. He smirked faintly. You've won a battle, Sheriff. But the war never ends. Alex leaned closer, her voice low and firm. Then I'll keep fighting. And I'll make sure you're there to see every piece of your empire crumble. Back in Whispering Pines, the town began to rebuild. The files Alex and her team released had ignited a national reckoning, exposing corruption and dismantling trafficking networks across the country. Eleanor reopened her diner, its neon sign a symbol of resilience. Riley, Diana, and the rest of the team found moments of quiet pride in their victory. Alex stood on the outskirts of town, looking out over the valley. The war wasn't over, but for the first time, she felt hope. Her phone buzzed, a message from a federal contact. The cartel's leadership is in shambles. International warrants are being issued. You started something big? Alex smiled grimly, her determination unshaken. They thought they could take this town, she said to herself. They'll think twice next time.